is a new show that I'm calling BeekTalk. My name is Eric, and I am the host. I'd like this to be an interactive thing, so if you hop on this live stream and you have any questions about honeybees or anything like that, you can leave me a comment, and I'd love to answer it. So I have been a beekeeper for a long time. I've been beekeeping for 14 years, and I've been teaching beekeeping for 4 years. And I absolutely love teaching people about the intricate little world that honeybees create for themselves. So that being said, I figured it would be a great opportunity to teach people via a live stream. I know that everybody likes having a podcast to listen to or a YouTube video or show to follow along to. So I figured I will live stream my first episode and every episode of BeekTalk to follow on Might Fight's Facebook Live and Might Fight's YouTube channel. Like I said, I've been keeping bees for 14 years, and I have a blast with it. A little bit about me. I figure I should give you a little bit of information about myself, and then talk about some of the goals that I have for this show, and then we'll take it from there. I would love to answer any questions that you have about honeybees. One of my favorite things to do is bees with people. So that's why I'm calling the show BeekTalk, because beekeeper and beekeeping have too many E's. So I figured we'll make it short so we can talk more about the bees instead of just the E's. So last year, I graduated from ESU, and I'm actually through ESU's business incubator right now. And I got a business degree, and I figured after graduation, I'll just hop right in and start a beekeeping business called Blossom and Buzz Beekeeping. I am a licensed honeybee producer in Pennsylvania, so I make bees for other beekeepers to foster and to take care of when they're at their house. And I also raise queens because just like any kind of livestock or any kind of animal, it's all about genetics. So I try and take a hand in that and raising bees that are really good at living here in Pennsylvania or in the Northeast. Earlier this year, I won a business plan competition for my startup called Might Fight, whose shirt I'm wearing right now. And as part from that competition, I actually won free tuition to a live streaming boot camp through Sohn Social Media. It was taught by a guy named Tim Sohn, and he gave me some tips and tricks on how to start a live stream show. So that's what I'm doing here. So I got to give a shout out to him for getting me started. Next, I'd like to talk about some of the goals that I have for BeekTalk. Like I said before, if you have any questions on moving, certainly comments, I can give them a read and see what's going on. Some of the goals and the topics that I have for the show. My goal is to have something for everyone. I'm a beekeeper and I love keeping bees, but I know that a lot of people are freaked out about anything that flies and that stings. So I want there to be a nice energy for people to ask questions and to learn. A lot of people who are like in the beekeeping community are kind of mean, rude, sarcastic. It says something about beepers, but I want to where it's safe to learn. Nobody feels discouraged to ask a question. That's an environment that I'm really well in, and I hope to create that environment for you guys. So some things that I'd like to talk about. There's thousands and hundreds of different methods and ideas and schools of thought around beekeeping, and they're all very interesting. Some of them are a bit of hogwash. Some of them are really based in the biology of bees. And the hard thing for beekeepers to do is find that happy medium of what is true to the bees, what makes keeper some honey and some money and keep the hive. So there's a balance that every beekeeper takes when they are learning methods, different ideas and practices about their bees. Some people take a more holistic approach and say, hands off, no plastic, no paint. I want the bees to be doing what they do if this was 1,000 years ago. And some other folks take the approach of, hey, are dying and we have to put our hands in there and try and keep them healthy. So I'm going to cut corners, make it easy, introducing some plastic components, introducing some technology to make the bees have an easier time. There's not necessarily a right or wrong to any of that, but it definitely calls a discussion, and that's what I want to have on this show, BeekTalk. Other things, it's hard to have a discussion when it's just me, and for this first episode of BeekTalk is me talk about the goals, the show, answering some questions at the end. But for episodes, I really want to have guests. The whole beekeeping community is full of people who have tons of to share, and I would really like to welcome some people onto the show, people who have a different school of thought than I follow in their area, because as we refine through becoming a beekeeper and developing as a beekeeper, sometimes it's the little details that you can pick up on and adapt the way you operate, make a big difference to the success of your bees. Some other things, I want to have unexperienced beekeepers, people who are in their first year on this show, to talk about some of the weird experiences that they have. I have some crazy stories about my first few years with bees, and I'm sure every person who has bees or has encountered bees, interesting stories. I want to discuss, because I've noticed after educating people for many years, new beekeepers feel like it's only happening to them, and it's not. It's totally not. Crazy stuff happens all the time, and I think it's really an interesting discussion to have. I can create this as an environment to have those discussions. I see Brandon has a question here. During winter, how small can the brood? Arkansas. Yes, so I am a beekeeper in Northeast America. This is Pennsylvania where I'm at, and beekeeping is different all across the country. So Brandon, about how the temperature was 70 degrees yesterday, and then it's been 50s, 60s, fluctuating around there, and he wants to know about how small can the brood cluster get. I'm not too sure about what happened in Southwest Arkansas, but here in Pennsylvania, we have periods of the winter where some colonies have no brood cluster at all. And that's not unusual, and it's not unhealthy or anything. It's not a point to be concerned about. It's actually just part of the life cycle of the bees. And that's definitely a discussion that we can go into full detail with. And that's another reason why I want to have this as a interactive live stream, is that I get to talk to folks like Brandon from Arkansas, where I wouldn't usually engage in beekeeping discourse with someone in that part of the country. So I'll get back to that question in a little bit longer. But each week, except for this week where it's kind of just a general talking about the goals, but each week here on out is going to have a that we're going to discuss in full depth, and then we can get some real rich ideas and discourse about those ideas. So next week, we're going to be talking about winter feeding, which is a topic that I love. But you'll have to tune in next Tuesday at 4 to hear that discussion. Some other topics that I can talk about on the show are not necessarily exactly about beekeeping. I feel like a lot of people are excluded by not being a beekeeper themselves. There's a lot of beekeeping discussion, and sometimes it goes a little above the heads of folks who don't want to keep bees, but they just want to learn a little bit about these real pollinators. So some other topics that I'd like to get into in future weeks would be like planting pollinator gardens, or planting bushes and trees with pollinators in mind. It's not just about the honeybees, it's about the moths and the butterflies and the hummingbirds and the bats. It's important to keep them all healthy. If it's good for us, it's good for all the pollinators. So that's a whole BeekTalk about. Like I said, methods and ideologies of beekeeping is a full-fledged discussion I'll have many times over. I said about winter feeding, but there's a lot of different layers and ideas around feeding bees in general. So don't think that you should feed bees at all. And if a hive to starve over winter, it's simply because the hive doesn't have eggs. Other beekeepers take the school of thought saying, if all I have to do is pour bottles of sugar hive them through winter, I, as the beekeeper, I'm going to do that every time. And there, one of those isn't necessary. It's all about how you approach the hive. We'll definitely talk about mite treatments. That my whole business, Mite Fight, is about. It's a subscription service where I send beekeepers pre-dosed mite treatments. That's a whole nother discussion. We can talk about hive configurations. In North America and most parts of the world, we use the Langstroth hive, which was actually invented here in Pennsylvania, so I'm really proud of that. But there's many, many, many different hive configurations, and there's actually different methods of performing inspections and different expectations from the colony based on configuration. And some other discussions that we can talk about the communication and like the culture of the bees themselves. A lot of people don't know that honeybees communicate with pheromones, but with dancing. So we can talk about how bees dance to tell each other where some good food sources are. And I certainly want you guys to be along for the ride. Like I said, any topics that you have want to discuss, you can leave me in the comments. I think that would be really fun to discuss. One other thing that I'm going to include, I have some stickers. I have a BeekTalk. Where's my finger? I have a BeekTalk sticker just for the show. I have a very interesting holograph. I also have the same Mite Fight logo that I have on the shirt. Every show that I do, I'm going to give away one of these stickers. It's going to be the BeekTalk sticker to the person who leaves my favorite comment. So I haven't found a rule yet to how to do this giveaway. I might in the future turn to a like, comment, share kind of a system. But for now, my favorite comment at the end of the live stream is going to get a nice little BeekTalk sticker sent to them in the mail. A thank you card from me, because I think in this time it's very important that we thank each other instead of finding what brings us apart. We have to talk about bees, which brings us all together. I am going to refer back to Brandon's question here. In Southwest Arkansas, he's adding pollen patties. He didn't see brood or eggs, but population was good. Possible the cluster could just be that small. And like I said, he's in Arkansas. So now I'm going to dig into some of the more educational aspects of the show. And we're going to talk about feeding a little bit, just based off this question. There is two kinds of feeds. There is carbohydrates and proteins. Just like us, we have to eat, bread for our carbs and grains. And then we also need like fruits and sugars to get energy. Same thing with the bees. The difference is the protein that the bees use is pollen. It's actually the pollen that makes you stuffy in the summertime. It's the stuff that covers your cars when you park under a big conifer tree. It's all about pollen. That is the protein source that the bees use to grow younger bees. We as beekeepers usually feed pollen, supplemental pollen, to the hives in the fall and the winter. This way, there's really an extra surplus of protein. So it's not like the hive is rationing out that resource, making weaker bees. If we supply it, we allow them to have a nice, big, healthy cluster. Sometimes that's actually detrimental to the hive. In the wintertime, when the temperature drops, the hive, the queen, will naturally lay less eggs. If there's not a lot of food out and about for the bees to go and collect, there's not really a need to have surplus individual bees in the colony. So what they'll do is they'll reduce the amount of eggs that they lay, so those resources can be shared with a fewer number of bees. So that means more resources to fewer bees. That makes everyone healthier. If you are at home and have a fridge full of food and it's just you, it's Thanksgiving. But if you're at home and you have 10 guests, the food in the fridge is depleted really fast. So that's why the bees will reduce laying. That makes a smaller cluster. One of the practices of beekeeping, when we're doing an inspection on a hive, the beekeeper goes in wanting to see a frame with brood, eggs, with developing bees in it to verify that we have a laying queen. So beekeepers get a little concerned when they go in, do an inspection, and don't see that brood. It sounds like that's what Brandon was concerned about, but I think as we're moving into winter with the colder weather coming around, it is not unusual to have a hive lay less eggs. If I do an inspection here in Pennsylvania, I'm not sure what the climate's like in Arkansas right now, but if I do an inspection here in Pennsylvania, only my very strongest hives are going to have brood. And out of 20, 30 frames, I should mention, I have a observational hive here. Woo! This is a frame. This is the unit for how. Oh, my teacher for the live stream boot camp, Tim Sohn, is on here. Hi, Tim. This is a frame. This is like the unit of beekeeping, basically. This is where the bees live. If you look up nice and close, there's little tiny cells where my green screen got messed up. I have cells behind me too. This is where the bees store all their food, lay all their eggs. This is where they exist. This is basically the infrastructure of honeybees. Just like we have roads to earth and we build, hotels and apartment complexes, honeycomb is the infrastructure of the honeybee colony. That being said, if I go in a hive in the summertime when there's a lot of food, a lot of flowers going around, I expect to see wall from this side, top, bottom, full of brood, full of honey, full of happens in the fall and summer. The resources dry up, and the bees make of rationing out those resources to the individuals they have in the hive. So that's when beekeepers get concerned, because they see that things aren't normal, see that things aren't the way they expect to see them in the spring. And that's a great discussion to have, because new beekeepers who are just going into their first winter usually will give me a call saying, Eric, I just did an inspection and I didn't see any brood. The last time I did an inspection 2 weeks ago, there was only one frame of brood and now there's none. Do I need a queen? And I'll say, if your hive has pollen and your hive has nectar, I wouldn't worry about a queen. I feel like she'll be in there. Just wait and see in the spring. And then, like clockwork, spring comes around, they open up the hive, and boom, there's eggs again. So that's just part of the life cycle of colonies, of bees. Now I have a question from Tim. Do bees get perturbed by anything in particular that we do? Why do they sting us sometimes? That's a great question, Tim. This is a keeper, and I love these questions because it reminds me of a fresher perspective. Yeah, there are certainly things that we do that the honeybees do. I do want to differentiate honeybees, which is my specialty. There's wasps, bald-faced hornets. There's all kinds of flying insects, and those guys can be mean just for the fun of it. So I don't want to give honeybees a bad name. I also don't have a lot of experience with those individuals. Talking about honeybees again, lots of things that we do can interfere with them. Grandma, there's a story about my grandma. She was wearing a floral dress, and she was outside in like the springtime. It might have been May, and she got stung right on the butt because she was wearing that floral dress. The bees can see a whole wide range of light that humans cannot see. We can see red. The bees can't do a great job of seeing red, but they can see the whole ultraviolet spectrum. So blues, purples, they can see it vibrant. She was wearing this floral dress, and the bees thought it was a flower because, hey, it looks like a flower. And then when my grandma started moving, the bee really did not know what was going on. So yeah, she got stung from that. Some other things that can happen, honeybees do not like banana fragrance. If you have like a kid's lotion, or like a kid, a lot of things sometimes include the smell of bananas. Unfortunately for humans, the chemical smells like bananas is when we go down to the molecular level, it's shaped very similarly to the pheromone for the honeybees, which is kind of like their alert danger pheromone. So when honeybees, they release this pheromone, it smells like bananas. So when the beekeeper's in the hive and the bees buzz and they sound upset, and the beekeeper can smell like a banana smell, it's best for the beekeeper to just take a breath, step back a little bit, give the bees some space to calm down, and then we can go back in to do our inspections. Other things that the bees don't like, they don't like lawnmowers, they don't like weed whackers. it does make sense. It's like this heavy, loud vibration. The bees don't like it. They don't like those vibrations. But one thing that you don't think about when you're on the riding mower is that honeybees are on the clover. They're pollinating the little flowers down there on the grass. And then boom, bah, you cut the flowers off and you chew up the bees and spit them out. That also sends out that alert pheromone. So that's when bees get upset and they sting people, is when they smell that pheromone. So anything that you do that is heavy vibration and winds up killing bees, like weed whacking or mowing the grass, not good. One thing to keep in mind about honeybees in particular, they don't want to sting you just for the fun of it. They only want to sting you to protect the colony. So if you're getting stung, you're posing a threat to them in some way. That might mean that you're too close to a hive. You might not know where that hive is. It could be in a tree or a building. But if they sting you, you might be too close. There's a lot of reasons you can get stung by bees. I do see that there's a few other questions. I have Rose, who was in my live stream class too. Hey, Rose. Do they love yellow? They can see the color yellow. I haven't asked any bees if what their colors are, but yellow is definitely an aspect of the hive. If you look at this honeycomb, it looks brown. That's simply because it's older comb and it's a little dirty. But when it's brand new comb, it looks just as yellow or even whiter than this background that I have here. They can see yellow flowers. They love honey yellow. Here in Pennsylvania, one of our honey crops is goldenrod, which of course is yellow. But ironically enough, its honey is a dark brown. But yeah, bees really they can see the colors blue really well. So that's why some irises or some blue flowers, they really, really dig, like hydrangeas and stuff. Let's see, we got some more questions. Do I help the bee population the more perennials and flowering bushes I plant? Perfect question, Rose. This is definitely going to be a more in-depth topic for a later show, because pollinator gardens, pollinator plantings are really important as we humans are really starting to consider our relationship with the ecosystems. One fact that I learned at the Philadelphia Beekeeping Symposium, it might have been early year, is each tree planted in a city, each mature tree planted in the city, when it's blooming, offers 2 acres of forage for the bees. So if you have on your city block, let's say 5 mature tulip poplar trees, which is a common city planting, that's the equivalent of almost 10 acres of, let's say, clover, where the bees can go and forage. Now, of course, those trees don't bloom the whole year, but they do bloom for a short period of time, and the bees certainly take advantage of that. My suggestion, I should say, to people who want to plant things that are good for the bees is stick to perennials. Annuals are nice. Humans, we like them because they're colorful, but they don't have the heavy roots that you need to bring a lot of nectar to the flowers. So things like perennial sage or thyme or rosemary, those fibrous herbs, not only are they great for us because we can use them in the kitchen, but in their second year, once they've gone through winter, they flower, and those flowers offer a lot of food to the bees. And they're also actually just really good for keeping away secondary pests. So things like Things like rosemary and nettles will actually try and keep away, and thyme actually can keep away mites. I mean, in a very low percentage, low success. Um, they can. Lost my train of thought. The perennials, I should say, do the best. Do the best. If you can plant bushes and trees that bloom, that's even better. And I mean, you're not going to get a lot of results in the first year, but a big, healthy tree that blooms for a long period of time. Maybe if you want to research or listen to one pollinator planting BeekTalk, some bushes and plants bloom when there are not a lot of resources in the natural environment. So I'm not sure about Arkansas, but here in Pennsylvania, during the month of July, it's usually pretty dry. There's not a lot of food for the bees. So that's when the bees go after your pick, because that can of Coke sure has a lot of carbohydrates in it. And there's not any flowers blooming, so I'm going to go for your can of Coke. But if you're doing a pollinator garden in an area where there's a during July, bushes like summer sweet might be perfect. They bloom from end of June straight through till August. They offer perennials. They're fibrous. They have beautiful white flowers, and they offer a lot of nectar to the bees. So, humans, of course, have an incredibly immense impact on the health of bees. But if you have a garden or have land to do some plantings, you are able to take that back, and you're able to do some plantings that are beneficial to the ecosystem. And I think that this next generation of people who are buying homes, and I think these people are becoming more conscious of the little things that we can do to help the ecosystem. And it comes full circle. When there's a lot of honeybees out there doing a good job, your allergies are reduced. So, it's a symbiotic relationship. We all live in this big blue earth bottle together. So anything that we do affects everybody. Let's see. I do think that on the bee purple trees, yeah, tulip poplars are beautiful honey producers. Unfortunately for the beekeeper, that honey usually crystallizes on the spot. Here I have a jar of honey that I turned upside down, and it is not dripping. It's pretty solid in here. This is actually tulip poplar honey. You can melt it, and then 10 days later, it's almost crystallized again. It's a bummer for some people who like liquid, but to folks who appreciate raw, natural honey, good stuff. So like I said, my goal for this show is to have a meaningful discussion about honeybees and beekeeping. I am hoping to have last about a half hour every Tuesday, starting at 4 o'clock. So if you're not subscribed or following Might Fight, I recommend that you follow me on Facebook or hop on YouTube and follow me there. And when I'm with this live stream, I will pick out my favorite comment, because a lot of them rolled in while I was talking about bees, and I will send out a wonderful BeekTalk sticker. If you would like to purchase some of these stickers or do a order for a Might Fight t-shirt, you can go to Might Fight, fight.buzz, and that's my website. You can, if you're a beekeeper, you can subscribe to Might Fight there, or you could purchase stickers, or like I said, pre-order one of these Might Fight shirts. But until then, I will talk to you next week at 4, next Tuesday at 4, when we have the second episode of BeekTalk. Thank you.